Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big drama going down last night with OpTic FormaL's Halo team in the championship final of the Salt Lake City Halo event that concluded last night. Spacestation Gaming, the home team, take the victory in highly controversial circumstances, as many of the games were reset and the OpTic boys are clearly not happy about the result. Big drama going on here. If this time was how happened to the Call of Duty League, it would be absolute chaos. Will it potentially mean for FormaL that he reconsiders his future in Halo and that potential return to Call of Duty that he talked about not that long ago? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, the conclusion to Doug Sensor Martin's world record setting attempt at the pull-up record in 24 hours. TJ says, alright, okay, you've had your fun, Doug. Now it's time for me to take over and break the record. This, of course, was that clip we saw yesterday of actually when Doug got to 8,941 to officially break the record, and then he kept on going, right? He had a few hours left to go of the attempt at this point. Of course, he'd already been going for like 19 hours by this point, and as I said, like, he made it look relatively easy. Obviously, he was in immense pain, physically and mentally, and that is what eventually he decided to basically end the run, and we'll get to that here in a second. But, you know, what an achievement. Honestly, I was so impressed by the fact that Doug, after he decided, you know what, enough's enough here, like, I'm gonna die if I keep doing this any longer, he was able to come up to the camera and just speak and say thanks and everything, and like, this guy is just so impressive, like, genuinely just so impressive. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when Doug told everyone, look, I'm going to win the Call of Duty World Championship, everyone was like, okay, are we serious, Doug? But when Doug said that he was going to break the pull-up world record, I think many of us took him pretty seriously because, you know, he's the type of guy that can do something like that. And to be fair, Doug got his ring, didn't he, right? Because of what happens over the course of the World Championship, all those old school national champions getting their ring, because back in the day when Doug won the national championship in 2010, that was effectively the world championship. Not quite, but the worlds didn't exist yet. But, you know, in hindsight, they've given those national championships their rings, and therefore Doug is, you know, a Call of Duty champion. He would argue maybe a world champion who's got the ring, although, of course, that's a matter for debate. But, like, multiple-time Call of Duty event winner, and now a world record holder in the fitness world. So what happened in the end is that Doug broke the record. He got to 9,000, and then he kept on pushing, and obviously had a few hours still left to go. At one point, he was doing 2 reps, and then 25 seconds rest, 2 more reps, and, you know, he got to like 9,200, and I was looking at it thinking, okay, 3 hours left. If he can do 4 a minute, then that's going to put him at like just about 10k. It was a bit touch and go whether he'd get to 10,000, and then he realized that his bicep was so strained, his hands were killing him, and he was like, I'm not going to get to 10k. And therefore he thought, okay, I'll just call it a day here at 9,250. Still pushing the record a long way beyond what it previously was. Still pushing the record to an incredibly impressive point, and honestly kind of proving that 10,000 is possible. I mean, Doug potentially could have got to 10k. I'm sure that someone else is going to think about whether they can do that, but I mean, that's a pretty sizable record break to extend it by 300 odd with a few hours to go as well. Like, just super impressive from Doug. So, and just if you're really squeamish, then maybe skip the next few seconds, but he does put out this kind of tweet here where he says, most pull-ups in 24 hours, and these are the images of his hands. I'm not gonna lie, like, he was wearing all sorts of bandages, right? His hands honestly don't look as bad as I thought they would look after this. I mean, the blood blisters on his pinkies are ridiculous, and, you know, he must have been in so much pain here. I honestly thought they were going to look worse than this, to be fair, because it was super bandaged up. Like, he had everything in terms of protection for his hands, but 9,000 odd pull-ups over like a 24-hour period, it is going to do some damage, isn't it? So congrats to Doug. Raised, you know, I think maybe $10,000, maybe more, I don't know, something in that ballpark for pancreatic cancer research. Just what an awesome day and great achievement, and you know, was getting a lot of credit from the community as well. Pretty much, you know, most people in the community at some point have come to blows with Doug on some topic or another, either as a player or on even the recent drama this season with the Boston Breach side, where maybe he's GMing the team, maybe he's not, all that stuff going on, and you know, everyone's had probably a bit of a discussion about something with Doug over the course of their career, but, you know, most players were giving him a lot of credit, certainly for Crim. So, I mean, so many players obviously were giving him his reward, and for good reason, and hopefully he's resting up well today, because I'm sure he is in agony. Let's talk though about some of this drama on the Halo side, because as Kayson says here from FaZe, people need to put some respect on Halo competitive. So much potential, great game, just need some love and some updates. Grand Final's been insane, and this has always kind of been true with Halo. The game is fundamentally solid, it's just they don't really, you know, push it in the right direction with the updates and the new maps and keep it alive. And this is always what I think about Call of Duty Esports, despite the fact that getting a new game every year is kind of bad, because it means that by the end of the game's life cycle, when it's probably at its best, then we no longer play it anymore. But at least there is something new every single year, whereas in Halo there isn't. And this is probably the fundamental reason why FormaL has talked about calling it a day from competitive Halo, and we can still expect that to be true. Maybe especially based on what we saw last night. So Shotzzy actually reposts this and says, like, Halo competitive is still good, it's just got its problems, obviously. So OpTic Gaming, they have their Call of Duty team, they have their Halo team, that's pretty much about it at the moment, right? I think even they let go of Apex and maybe Rocket League and stuff like this, the other esports that they had, but they've still got the Halo team, a very good Halo team. Of course, they made the changes, right, with Dead Zone, formerly known as Penguin, coming into their roster for APG, so it's Lucid, Trippy, FormaL, and Dead Zone, that's the team before, with the intention to beat SSG, to beat FaZe, and to, you know, beat Sentinels, these other good teams in Halo, and become the best in the world. And again, right, as they were back in 2022 when they won the World Championship, then last year at the World Championship they came seconds. This year FormaL's trying to do it again, and FormaL's been playing lights out Halo. Like, he was probably OpTic's best player, you can argue, for a large portion of this event, which, like, it's FormaL, maybe it shouldn't be a massive surprise, but they beat FaZe 3-1, that was impressive. They then took down Shopify Rebellion 3-2 to make it to the grand finals, and there's some positives to take away from this tournament for OpTic Gaming, because they go into the World Championship next month, and that's the big one, right? I mean, that's the one you want to win. If there's events to get second at, it's every other event, but you know, you don't want to get second at the World Championship, right? And their record of getting second right now is not pretty at all, and there are of course some questions on exactly why, but they go into the grand finals and it's looking pretty good. I mean, they go down 1-0, they then, I think it was 2-2 the grand finals at one point, and then Spacestation kind of pulled away with it. But to be honest, during the grand finals, this could have been a very different story had it not been for some reset, right? And we see this in Call of Duty, and it's as frustrating as ever. The game has problems, and fundamentally it's on the developers to actually solve it, right? But at this point it was 2-2, SSG won this map and they're going to go to the distance. But if you look at the replies on this tweet, you can already see what was going on here, right? So, you know, how many resets do SSG want? It's a joke. You know, can't you just call the tournament now? And, okay, this guy's just roasting OpTic, to be fair. But the point is, for most of these guys, that there's a lot of resets happening in these games. Now, we see this in COD, and unfortunately, in most esports, well, let's say an esport like Counter-Strike, they can actually reset the game from the point where it was paused. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist in COD. And I know they talked about, well, the pause feature never really arrived into competitive COD, doesn't exist in Halo either. So if there's a problem, you just have to suck it up and run it back from the start again, which means that there's multiple occasions where OpTic had a lead in a certain situation, someone lags out, someone, you know, disconnects, or some problem happens, and then they have to reset it from scratch. There's, you know, ideally there's a better solution for this. Unfortunately, there isn't really, apart from fixing the game. That would be a problem. The other thing to note here, right, is this was a Spacestation home event. Like, it was basically hosted by Spacestation Gaming in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that's another piece that's added to some of the drama here, right? Because, you know, imagine it was the World Championship this year in Texas for Call of Duty with the OpTic boys in the grand finals, and there were like 2 to 3 maps where they had gone down early on to Cloud9, New York Subliners on the other side of the stage, and then all of a sudden one of the OpTic boys gets a problem, they lag out of the game, and then they have to reset it from scratch, and that happens multiple times. You know, there would be people calling all sorts of cheats, right? Because it's their home events, you know, people are going to say it's rigged, whatever, and you know, that's what some of the comments was last night. So eventually at Spacestation, they won the first set of grand finals 4-2 because they'd come from the losers bracket. They had to win 2 best of 7s against OpTic, but at this point, right, OpTic was just completely mentally checked out. They got 4-0 swept in the second set, and Spacestation take the victory. As you can see here, the Spacestation logo on the major, and OpTic make another grand finals and lose another grand finals. So FormaL frustrated about it, and as he says, another second place, Worlds in 3 weeks, and that's the big one. But the drama really kicked off afterwards, because Trippy is usually pretty calm in demeanour, but he does make it quite clear, not one to complain ever, but we can never have resets like that again in any series, let alone the grand finals. I've never experienced anything like that in my career. The big one really actually was from Lucid. So Spacestation, they obviously decide to twist the knife a bit, and they say goes to HCS Major, makes it to finals, plays us and loses. That's what OpTic do. And Lucid Lucid then says in the replies, just gonna start unplugging cables every time we're losing, he says. So pretty much direct, and Lucid usually, you know, he wouldn't only say this if he's really frustrated, and obviously for good reason here, but he's pretty much accusing them of deliberately pulling the plug in order to gain an advantage by resetting the game. And, you know, it was mentioned that Eco told Bound during a listening that we heard, plug it back in, kind of implying that he'd unplugged the controller or something and was going to put it back in. Bound then responded and said, we were telling him to unplug it and plug it in again to continue the game because we were winning and we wanted to keep playing, but his controller was messing up. And then he says, look, it's the game's problem, not our fault. Which, fair, but also, it's not like there was only one reset, right? Like, maybe Bound's explanation is fair for the one specific reset, but for the other ones, what's the explanation there? Like, I don't know, and that's why there's a lot of controversy about it this morning. So, FormaL says the reset sucked, but, you know, I guess from FormaL's POV, he's a good enough competitor that he's not going to in his head say, okay, well, we only lost because of the resets. Maybe on some level they did, but also as a team, you know, there's always something to be improved on. You can always be more mentally resilient. You can always learn that, okay, you need to get better here and there. And Spacestation are probably the best team in the game, to be fair, right now anyway. But, you know, for FormaL and OpTic, it's tough because I think they've made 4 grand finals this season and they've lost all 4 of them. They've come second 4 times in a row. And I think if you include last year's World Championship, they've come second 5 times in a row, which is brutal, to be honest. And FormaL also talks about the crowd, because it was a Spacestation home event. There was, you know, the crowd was being, he says, very disrespectful, but he does admit that, you know, maybe at an OpTic event you'll see a similar thing the other way. But there was quite a few people attending that said that it was like one of the most disrespectful and worst crowds they'd actually seen. So, you know, I thought that was interesting as well. And he says, like, happy that their Slayer's a bit better, but we've got to, you know, correct a couple of things up. But he says, like, loads of heartbreaks, loads of horrible losses, but of course they can bounce back at the World Championship. Another funny story as well is that the trophy that Space Station won, like their own trophy, got nicked and it's gone. So this guy says, director of events over there, if you stole the trophy, we have security cameras, get in touch before the police report is filed, because apparently the trophy's gone. So this happened like way more often than you'd think it would at esports. I don't understand why this happens so often, to be fair, but yeah, I guess it is what it is. But I guess we should talk about what this could mean for FormaL, right? Because of course he's going to play the Halo World Championship. There was some links to him to 100 Thieves because Nature was talking about it. Hex and Scump then responded and said, oh, you know, kind of, you better not do that type thing. And it seems unlikely, but FormaL has said on stream a while ago that he probably won't play another season of Halo. This is probably it, and let's be real, if they don't win champs, he might just feel, well, he might want to go again and try and win it again, or he might just feel kind of checked out of the Halo grind at this point, because that current team is not dissimilar to Vanguard FaZe, where they're losing every single grand final. Then again, though, in Vanguard, FaZe lost to, like, Gorillas with Spart in a final, so, like, they would lose to anyone they played. At least, to be fair to OpTic, they have generally lost to the best team on the weekends, but it's obviously still not good enough. There's not going to be a spot on the OpTic Texas Call of Duty roster for FormaL, obviously, because, you know, they just won the World Championship and they're not going to replace Kenny or Dashy for him as it stands. So we've talked about the other teams, you know, even a Toronto could be interesting and a couple of other options as well. But as I said before, timing is quite important, right? The Halo World Championship is on the 4th to the 6th of October. By that point, we're probably expecting the top teams at least will have their rosters locked down. So either FormaL goes to those teams now and says, hey, I want to join, but of course that's going to disrupt his practice and his preparation for the Halo World Championship. So it's a difficult one to manage, but this, after all the results, these are the pools, these are the groups, and OpTic, of course, the #1 seed here in Group B, going into the big one in Seattle, Washington, in a month or so's time. And very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.